The forest
I've got you.
stretched endlessly in
It
every
hurts so
direction,
much.
dense with
We'll get
California
through this
pines that
together.
had stood for centuries. Ancient trees that had witnessed wars, births, deaths, and secrets. The afternoon sun filtered through their branches in golden shafts, painting patterns on the forest floor that shifted with every breath of wind. It should have been peaceful. It should have been just another ride through familiar territory. But something felt wrong. Grayson Ashford killed his engine and dismounted his 58-year-old body, moving with the careful precision of a man who had learned to respect his limitations. 3 years of retirement hadn't softened him much. His leather jacket still fit across his shoulders the way it had for 3 decades. His hands, scarred and weathered, still gripped the handlebars with the same certainty they always had. But time had etched itself into the lines around his eyes, into the silver threading, through his dark hair, into the way his knees protested after a long ride. Behind him, the rumble of motorcycles faded as the other Devil's riders pulled off the dirt road. 11 men, most of them closer to 60 than 50, all of them wearing the patch that had defined their lives. The skull and crossbones, the devil's horns, the words that promised brotherhood until death. Grayson watched them gather in small clusters, sharing cigarettes and stories, their laughter carrying through the trees. These were the old guard, the men who remembered when the Devil's Riders meant something more than weekend rides and charity poker runs, when they were young and dangerous and convinced they would live forever. He turned away from them and walked into the woods, his boots pressed into years of accumulated pine needles, creating a soft cushion that muffled his footsteps. The smell of earth and resin filled his lungs. Something pulled him forward, deeper into the forest, away from the familiar sounds of his brothers. An instinct honed by 35 years of paying attention to things that felt wrong. The terrain changed as he pushed through low-hanging branches. The ground became uneven, disturbed. His heart rate picked up. His breathing quickened. Not from exertion, from recognition. Someone had been digging here. The soil was fresh, darker than the surrounding earth. Recently turned. The kind of thing you noticed if you had spent enough years looking for things people wanted to stay hidden. Grayson had buried secrets before. He knew what they looked like. He fell to his knees beside the disturbed earth. His hands, those scarred and weathered hands that had held babies and steering wheels and weapons, began to dig. Slowly at first, then faster. Dirt collected under his fingernails. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool forest air. The smell hit him before he found anything. Faint but unmistakable. Death. His hands struck something soft. Fabric. He cleared more soil, moving faster now, his breathing ragged. A jacket emerged from the dirt. Black leather. He recognized it immediately. The jacket he had given his daughter for her 21st birthday. The one she never went anywhere without. The world tilted sideways. More dirt fell away, revealing dark hair matted with earth. A pale face streaked with soil. Features he had known since the moment she was born. The same nose as her mother. The same stubborn chin as her grandmother. The same determination in her closed eyes that had driven her since she was old enough to walk. Evangeline. Eva, his only daughter. A sound escaped Grayson's throat. Something primitive and broken. The kind of sound a man makes when his heart stops beating, but his body keeps functioning. His hands trembled violently as he cleared more dirt from her face, from her shoulders, from the leather jacket that had been her armor against the world. She was cold. So cold. He pulled her from the shallow grave with the desperate strength of denial. She couldn't be dead. Not Eva. Not his brilliant, fierce, impossible daughter who had always been too smart and too brave for her own good. The daughter who had looked at him with those serious eyes and said she was going to make the world better, whether the world wanted it or not. Grayson collapsed backward, cradling her against his chest, rocking her the way he had when she was an infant and the nightmares came. His whole body shook with sobs that had no sound. Around him, the forest remained silent, bearing witness to a father's discovery of the worst truth a parent can face. His daughter was dead, and someone had buried her like garbage in the middle of nowhere. Time lost meaning. Seconds stretched into hours. Or maybe it was minutes. He held her and rocked and tried to make sense of a universe that would allow this. Eva was 25 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. She was supposed to outlive him by decades, supposed to stand over his grave, not the other way around. His hand, still moving on instinct, found something in her jacket pocket, a folded piece of paper. The edges were worn as if it had been read and refolded many times. He recognized Eva's handwriting immediately, the neat, precise letters she had practiced until they were perfect. His vision blurred with tears as he began to read. Dad. His breath caught. She never called him Dad in person, always Father or Sir when she was being formal. Dad was for written words for moments when she wanted him to know she was speaking from the heart. If you're reading this, then I'm already gone. I need you to know that I don't regret anything. I did what I had to do, what you taught me to do. You always said that Ashfords don't run from hard choices. We face them head on no matter the cost. Grayson's hands tightened on the paper. What had she done? What choice had his daughter faced? I've been working undercover for the FBI for 3 years. I know this will shock you, maybe even feel like a betrayal, but I need you to understand why. Do you remember that night when I was 17, when I found you in the garage staring at Mom's picture, and you told me the truth about the things you did when you ran the Devil's Riders, the things that kept you up at night? He remembered. God, he remembered. She had been so young, so idealistic, and he had been drunk and maudlin and told her more than he should have. About the gray areas, the compromises, the times when he had looked the other way because it was easier than asking questions, the guilt that had followed him into retirement. You said you wished you could go back and do things differently, that you wished you had been brave enough to stand up when it mattered. Well, I decided to do it for you, to fix the things you couldn't fix, to be the person you wanted to be. The words blurred on the page. His daughter, his fierce, impossible daughter, had taken his drunken confessions and turned them into a mission. The Serpent Syndicate has been using the Devil's Riders as cover for their operations. Human trafficking, money laundering, weapons deals. They've infiltrated the club at the highest levels. I gathered evidence. Names, dates, transactions. Everything needed to bring them down. Grayson's blood turned to ice. The Devil's Riders compromised. His legacy, his father's legacy, corrupted by outsiders. And Eva had discovered it. Eva had been fighting a war he didn't even know existed. But they figured out who I was. I can hear them coming as I write this. I don't have much time. The evidence is hidden where we used to play when I was little. You remember our special place where you taught me to ride my first bike? It's all there. The old garage, the abandoned warehouse district where he had taken her every weekend, teaching her to balance on 2 wheels to feel the freedom of the open road. She had hidden the evidence there, knowing he would understand. Please be careful, Dad. These people are dangerous. They've killed before. They won't hesitate to kill again. But I know you. I know you won't let this go. You'll want justice. You'll want revenge. Just remember what you taught me, smart beats strong, every time. A ghost of a smile touched his lips despite the tears. She had listened to every word he had ever said, even when he thought she was too young to understand. I love you, Dad. I always have. You've been the greatest father a daughter could ask for. Everything I am, I learned from you. The good and the bad, the strength and the stubbornness. You taught me to fight for what's right, even when it cost everything. Ashfords don't quit. Love always, Eva. The letter fell from his hands. But as Grayson looked down at his daughter's face, something crashed through his grief like a tidal wave. Memory. 6 months after Eva had started her FBI assignment, she had come to him, late at night, in his garage. She couldn't keep the secret anymore. Dad, she had said, her voice shaking, I need to tell you something. I'm not who you think I am. And she had told him everything, the FBI, the Serpent Syndicate, the danger she was in every single day. Grayson had wanted to pull her out immediately, to lock her in a room where the world couldn't hurt her. But Eva had grabbed his hands with that fierce determination he knew so well. Dad, I need to do this. For you, for the club, for everyone they've hurt. Please don't make me stop, please. If anything happens to you, then you'll finish it. Her eyes had blazed with conviction. Promise me, if I can't complete this, you will. You'll take down the Serpent Syndicate. You'll clean the corruption from the Devil's Riders. You'll make it right. Promise me. He had looked at his daughter, 23 years old, brilliant, brave, and absolutely convinced she could change the world, and made a promise he never thought he'd have to keep. Promise, Wamo. Now that promise felt like a curse he had known had let her continue because he respected her choice, because he believed she was smart enough, careful enough, good enough to survive. He had been wrong. I knew, Grayson whispered, his voice breaking. I knew, and I let you go back. I let you walk into danger. I let you die. The guilt was a living thing eating him from the inside. He had protected her from skinned knees and bullies and boys with bad intentions. But he couldn't protect her from this. Couldn't protect her from the consequences of her own courage. Grayson looked down at Eva's peaceful face. Cleaned of some of the dirt now. She looked younger than 25. She looked like the little girl who had climbed onto his motorcycle and demanded he teach her to fly. His grief hardened into something else. Something colder and sharper. Someone had killed his daughter. Someone had hunted her down and murdered her and buried her in a shallow grave like she was nothing. They would pay. But more than that, he would keep his promise. He would finish what she started. Not because he wanted revenge, because he had sworn to her he would. Because Ashfords don't quit. Grayson carefully lifted Eva's body and began the long walk back to where his brothers waited. Each step felt like walking through concrete. His arms ached. His chest felt like it was being crushed. But he kept walking, because that's what Ashfords did. They kept going no matter how much it hurt. The other riders saw him emerge from the trees, and the laughter died instantly. They saw what he carried. They saw the dirt and the tears and the broken look on a man who had never broken before. Someone called his name. Someone else cursed. But Grayson didn't stop walking until he reached his motorcycle. He carefully arranged Eva across the seat, supporting her weight, making sure she was secure. His brothers gathered around in silence, removing their caps, crossing themselves, offering the only respect they could give the dead. No one asked questions. Not yet. They would come later. For now, there was only the ride home. The longest ride of Grayson Ashford's life, 3 years earlier. The FBI field office in Los Angeles buzzed with the controlled chaos of a Monday morning. Agents moved between desks, phones rang constantly, coffee machines worked overtime. In a small conference room on the 3rd floor, Evangeline Ashford sat across from Special Agent Margaret Hawthorne and tried not to show how nervous she was. Ava was 22 years old, fresh out of Quantico, top of her class in firearms tactics and behavioral analysis. She had aced every test, impressed every instructor, and graduated with commendations that would normally guarantee her a choice assignment. But there was nothing normal about what she wanted. Margaret Hawthorne studied the file in front of her with the careful attention of someone who had spent 30 years reading between the lines. She was 52, with iron gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that had seen too much to be easily fooled. The kind of woman who commanded respect just by walking into a room. Your test scores are exceptional, Margaret said, finally looking up, particularly in undercover operations. Your psyche eval shows high resilience, adaptability, and what the examiner called an unusual capacity for sustained deception. Eva kept her expression neutral. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me yet. Margaret closed the file. Do you know why you're here, Agent Ashford? You're looking for someone to infiltrate a criminal organization. We're looking for someone to infiltrate the Serpent Syndicate, one of the most dangerous criminal enterprises on the West Coast. They're connected to everything. Politicians, law enforcement, legitimate businesses. They've been operating for 15 years, and we haven't been able to touch them. Eva leaned forward slightly. Because they're smart. Because they're paranoid. They vet everyone. Background checks, surveillance, polygraphs. They've rooted out 3 undercover operations in the past 5 years. 2 of those agents barely made it out alive. The 3rd didn't. The room fell silent. Margaret let the weight of those words settle before continuing. Your father was Grayson Ashford, president of the Devil's Riders Motorcycle Club for 20 years before he retired 3 years ago. It wasn't a question, but Eva answered anyway. Yes, ma'am. That's why you're here. The Serpent Syndicate has been using motorcycle clubs as cover for their operations. Moving product laundering money, establishing territories. The Devil's Riders aren't directly involved, but there are connections. Your father's connections. Eva's jaw tightened. My father is retired. He hasn't been involved with club business since... I know. Margaret's voice softened slightly. I'm not suggesting your father is Dirty Agent Ashford. I'm suggesting that you have access. You grew up around these people. You know how they think, how they operate. You could get close to the Serpent Syndicate in ways our other agents couldn't. You want me to use my father's reputation. I want you to use your knowledge. There's a difference. Eva sat back processing. Her whole life she had been Grayson Ashford's daughter, the Reaper's kid, the princess of the Devil's Riders. People had looked at her and seen her father's legacy for better or worse. She had joined the FBI partly to escape that shadow, to be her own person, to prove she was more than just someone's daughter. And now they wanted her to embrace it. "What makes you think I can do this?" Eva asked quietly. Margaret opened the file again and pulled out a single sheet of paper, Ava's personal statement from her FBI application. She began to read aloud. "I want to join the FBI because I believe in justice, real justice, not the kind that looks the other way when it's convenient, not the kind that compromises because the truth is complicated. My father was a good man who made choices he regrets, choices that kept him up at night, choices that ate at him until he couldn't stand to look at himself in the mirror. I don't blame him. He did what he thought he had to do in a world with no easy answers. But I want to be better. I want to fix the things he couldn't fix. I want to stand up when it matters, even if it costs me everything." Eva's cheeks burned. She had written that late at night, emotional and idealistic, thinking no one would really read it. Margaret set the paper down and met Eva's eyes. "That's why I think you can do this. Because you're not doing it for glory or advancement. You're doing it because you believe it matters. That's the only kind of agent who survives deep cover, the ones who believe. And if they figure out who I am, then you'll be in serious danger. I won't lie to you, Agent Ashford. This is the most dangerous assignment the Bureau can offer. You'll be completely isolated, no backup, no wire, check-ins only when absolutely safe. You'll be living with criminals, earning their trust, committing minor crimes to maintain your cover. You'll have to do things that keep you up at night, things you can't talk about afterward, things that change you." Ava thought about her father, about the weight he carried, the guilt that had driven him into retirement, the night she had found him in the garage staring at nothing, lost in memories he wouldn't share. She didn't want that burden, but she understood now that some burdens were necessary. Some weight had to be carried so that others wouldn't have to carry it. "When do I start?" Eva asked. Margaret smiled grimly. "There's one more thing you need to know. We have intelligence suggesting there's a mole inside the FBI, someone feeding information to the Serpent Syndicate. We don't know who. We don't know how high it goes, which means you can't trust anyone. Not your fellow agents, not your supervisors, only me. How do I know I can trust you? You don't. But I'm the one offering you this assignment, which means either I'm clean or I'm setting you up. Either way, you'll find out soon enough." The brutal honesty was almost refreshing. Eva appreciated not being coddled, not being treated like she needed protection from the ugly truth. "What about my father?" Eva asked. "Does he need to know?" "That's your decision, but I'd recommend against it. The less he knows, the safer he is, and the safer you are." Eva nodded slowly. Her father had spent 3 years trying to leave his old life behind, trying to find peace. If she told him what she was planning, he would try to stop her. Or worse, he would try to help. And that would put him in danger. Better that he never knew. Better that he thought his daughter had moved on, found a safe desk job, lived the normal life he had always wanted for her. "I'll do it," Eva said firmly. "I'll infiltrate the Serpent Syndicate." Margaret extended her hand across the table. "Welcome to the Operation, Agent Ashford. Try to stay alive." They shook hands, a pact sealed, a path chosen that could never be unchosen. Eva Ashford had no idea that in 3 years her father would be pulling her body from a shallow grave, that she would leave him a letter explaining choices she hadn't yet made, that her decision in this moment would set in motion events that would destroy everything and everyone she loved. All she knew was that she was finally doing something that mattered, something her father would be proud of, even if he never knew. 8 days after Eva's death, 5 days after Grayson found her. The garage smelled like motor oil and memories. Grayson sat in the darkness, Eva's letter clutched in one hand, a bottle of whiskey in the other. He hadn't turned on the lights, didn't want to see the tools he and Eva had used together. The workbench where she had learned to take apart engines. The wall where he had marked her height every birthday until she turned 18. The evidence was here somewhere, hidden in their special place. But he couldn't bring himself to look for it yet. Not when Eva's body was lying in the morgue. Not when he could still smell the earth from her grave on his clothes. Not when every time he closed his eyes, he saw her pale face streaked with dirt. His phone had been ringing all day. Wyatt Brennan, the current Devils Riders president, demanding to know what happened. Other club members calling to offer condolences that felt hollow. He had turned off his phone eventually, unplugged from the world, sat alone in the darkness with his daughter's letter and his father's whiskey, and tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong. Eva had been FBI for 3 years. He had known for 2 of those years, and he had let her continue, had kept her secret, had trusted her to be careful, had believed she would survive. The guilt was crushing. The weight of a promise he couldn't keep. The father who had failed his only daughter. The garage door opened with a creak that cut through the silence. Grayson didn't turn around, didn't react, just took another drink and waited to see who had tracked him down. Footsteps approached, measured, careful. The footsteps of someone who understood that a man in grief was a dangerous thing. Grayson, a woman's voice, professional but not cold, firm but not harsh. He finally looked up. A woman stood in the doorway backlit by the streetlight outside. 50s gray hair, expensive suit that had seen better days. She carried herself like law enforcement, the kind of bearing that came from years of authority. "Who are you?" Grayson's voice was rough from disuse and whiskey. "Special Agent Margaret Hawthorne, FBI." She pulled out her credentials, letting him see them in the dim light. "I was Eva's handler." Grayson set down the bottle and stood slowly. His body ached from sitting too long, from digging his daughter out of the ground, from carrying her weight back to civilization. "You got her killed." It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. Margaret didn't flinch. "Yes, I put her in an impossible situation and she paid the price. I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life." "That's supposed to make me feel better." "No, nothing is going to make you feel better, Mr. Ashford. Your daughter is dead and it's my fault. I'm not here for forgiveness. I'm here because Eva wanted you to have this." She held out a small device, a thumb drive. Grayson stared at it like it was a snake. "What is it?" "Everything Eva collected over 3 years, every piece of evidence, every connection, every name. She sent it to me the day before she died, with instructions that if anything happened to her, I was to give it to you and only you." "Why me?" "Because she trusted you more than she trusted the FBI. She knew there was a mole inside the Bureau, someone feeding information to the Serpent Syndicate, someone who compromised her cover. Eva did not know who to trust, but she trusted you." Grayson took the thumb drive with hands that trembled slightly. So small, such a tiny thing to contain 3 years of his daughter's life. "Did she know," he asked quietly, "that they were coming for her?" Margaret's expression tightened. "Yes, she knew. She sent me a message that morning, said she had been compromised, said she was going to try to disappear, but wasn't optimistic. She asked me to look after you if the worst happened. You're doing a great job so far." The sarcasm was bitter, but Margaret accepted it without complaint. She probably deserved worse. "There's something else you should know," Margaret continued. "Eva left you a video message. It's on that drive. I haven't watched it. She encrypted it with a password that only you would know." Grayson's throat tightened. "What password?" "She said you would know. Something about a promise." A promise. Grayson knew immediately. The night Eva turned 16, he had taken her to the overlook above the city, and they had watched the sunset together. She had been going through a rough patch, struggling with who she was and who she wanted to be. He had told her that no matter what happened, no matter what choices she made, he would always be proud of her. "Promise," she had asked. Promise, he had sworn. The password would be promise. His daughter always so careful with her words, always leaving breadcrumbs for him to follow. "The Serpent Syndicate killed her," Margaret said, "but they didn't act alone. Someone in the Devil's Riders helped them. Someone close to your organization provided information about Eva's movements, her safe houses, her routine. They hunted her down and executed her because she got too close to the truth." Grayson's hands curled into fists. "Who?" That's what Eva was trying to find out when she died. The mole inside the FBI, the traitor inside the Devil's Riders. The connections that tie it all together. It's all in her files, but you have to be careful, Mr. Ashford. These people have already killed once. They won't hesitate to kill again. Let them try. Margaret studied him for a long moment, taking his measure, seeing something in his face that made her nod slowly. Eva said you were the strongest man she ever knew. Said you taught her everything that mattered. Said that if anyone could finish what she started, it would be you. Margaret turned to leave, then paused. She loved you very much, Mr. Ashford. Everything she did because she wanted to make you proud. She succeeded, Grayson whispered to the darkness. But Margaret was already gone. Grayson didn't watch the video right away. Couldn't bring himself to see his daughter's face on a screen, knowing it was the last time he would ever hear her voice. Instead, he went through her files methodically. Years of training took over. The part of him that had run the Devil's Riders for 2 decades, making hard decisions and seeing patterns others missed. Eva had been thorough, frighteningly thorough. She had documented everything: dates times locations, photographs of meetings between Serpent leadership and unknown figures, financial records showing money flowing through legitimate businesses, shipping manifests with missing cargo, phone records connecting dots that shouldn't be connected. And they're buried in the data evidence that the Devil's Riders had been compromised. 3 businesses owned by club members were being used to launder Serpent money. 2 warehouses where the club stored legitimate cargo were also housing illegal shipments. 5 club members had made deposits into offshore accounts that coincided with Serpent operations. Eva had found the rot, and it went deep. Grayson's hands shook as he scrolled through the files. His legacy, his father's legacy, everything they had built over 50 years corrupted by outsiders who saw the Devil's Riders as nothing more than useful tools. The worst part was that Eva had been right to become FBI, right to investigate, right to risk everything. Because if she hadn't, the Serpent Syndicate would have eventually destroyed the Devil's Riders from within, turned them into something unrecognizable, made them complicit in horrors they never agreed to. His daughter had tried to save them, and they had killed her for it. Finally, when he couldn't put it off any longer, Grayson opened the video file and entered the password. Promise. The screen flickered and Eva's face appeared. She was sitting in what looked like a cheap motel room. No makeup, hair pulled back, dark circles under her eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. She looked tired. She looked scared. But she looked like his daughter. Hi, Dad. Grayson's vision blurred instantly, the casual greeting like she was calling home after a normal day at work, not recording what she knew might be her last words. If you're watching this, then I'm already gone. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't help. I know nothing I can say will make this better. But I need you to know some things before you do what I know you're going to do. She smiled sadly, and Grayson saw himself in that smile. The stubborn determination, the acceptance of hard truths. First, don't blame yourself. You're probably sitting there right now going through everything, wondering what you missed, what signs you should have seen, how you could have protected me. Stop. I made my choices. I knew the risks. I did this because I believed it mattered. Because you taught me that some things were worth fighting for even when the fight costs everything. Eva leaned closer to the camera, her voice dropping lower. Second, I found something big. Bigger than I expected. The Serpent Syndicate has been using the Devil's Riders for 8 years. Since you were still President Dad. They infiltrated slowly, carefully, corrupting members one at a time, making alliances, building dependencies. By the time anyone noticed, it was too late. They're embedded deep, and there's someone inside the club helping them. Someone you trust. Grayson's stomach turned to ice. I don't know who it is yet. I have suspicions, but no proof. That's what got me killed, probably. I pushed too hard, asked too many questions. Someone noticed and reported back. Now they're coming for me. She paused, collecting her thoughts. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier. Third, and this is the most important thing. I don't want you to avenge me, Dad. I want you to finish what I started. There's a difference. Revenge is about anger and pain. It's about making someone hurt the way you're hurting. But justice is about fixing what's broken, about protecting the people who come after us, about making sure my death meant something. Tears streamed down Eva's face now, but her voice remained steady. You always said that Ashfords don't quit, that when we start something, we see it through to the end, no matter how hard it gets. Well, I started something and I can't finish it. So I'm passing it to you. Finish it, Dad. Not for me. For everyone else, the Serpent Syndicate will hurt if they're not stopped. She wiped her eyes and forced a smile. I love you. I've always loved you. You were the best father I could have asked for. You taught me to be strong, to be smart, to stand up for what's right even when it's scary. Everything I am, I learned from you. The good and the bad, the courage and the stubbornness. Eva reached towards the camera as if she could somehow reach through time and space to touch him one last time. I'm proud to be your daughter. I hope you're proud of me too. Ashfords don't quit, right? She smiled one more time, that stubborn, determined smile that had defined her whole life. Finish it, Dad, and then let it go. Live your life. Be happy. That's what I want. That's what I need you to do. Promise me. The video ended. The screen went black. Grayson sat in the darkness and wept. For his daughter. For the promise he had made her when she was alive. For the new promise she asked him to make now that she was gone. He would keep both promises. He would finish what she started. And then somehow he would find a way to live with it. The Devil's Riders Clubhouse sat on the edge of town, a sprawling building that had started as a garage and grown over the decades into something more. Part warehouse, part meeting hall, part second home to men who had nowhere else to belong. The parking lot was full when Grayson arrived. Word had spread fast. The Reaper was coming back. He parked his motorcycle in the spot that had been reserved for him for 20 years. No one had taken it in the 3 years since he retired. Some traditions ran too deep to break. The door opened before he reached it. Wyatt Brennan stood in the doorway, a man of 55 who had inherited the president's patch when Grayson stepped down. Wyatt was capable, fair, respected, but he had never wanted the job. Had taken it because someone had to and no one else was willing. Grayson, Wyatt's voice was carefully neutral. Wasn't expecting to see you here. We need to talk. About Eva. It wasn't a question. Grayson pushed past him into the clubhouse. The main room was full, 20 men, maybe more, all wearing their Devil's Riders cuts, all looking at him with expressions that ranged from sympathy to suspicion to something harder to define. These were his brothers, his family, the men he had ridden with for decades, and one of them had helped kill his daughter. Sit down, Grayson said quietly. The command in his voice was unmistakable. These men had followed his orders for 20 years. The habit ran deep. They sat. Grayson stood at the front of the room, the same place he had stood for countless meetings, countless decisions, countless moments when the fate of the club rested on his shoulders. 8 days ago, my daughter was murdered. 5 days ago, I found her body buried in the woods. She had been dead for 3 days before I found her. Someone killed her and left her in a shallow grave like she was nothing. The room was silent. Some of the men looked at the floor. Others met his gaze steadily. No one spoke. Eva was FBI. She spent 3 years undercover investigating the Serpent Syndicate. She discovered that they've been using this club as cover for their operations. Money laundering, weapons trafficking, human trafficking. They've infiltrated us, corrupted us, made us complicit in crimes we never agreed to. Now there were murmurs, angry denials, shocked curses. Someone in this room helped them. Grayson continued, his voice cutting through the noise. Someone provided information about Eva's movements. Someone betrayed my daughter to save their own skin or line their own pockets. And I'm going to find out who. That's a serious accusation, Wyatt said carefully. You got any proof? Grayson pulled out a folder and threw it on the table. Photographs spilled across the surface. Images of Devil's Riders, members meeting with known Serpent associates. Bank records showing suspicious transactions. Shipping manifest with missing cargo. The evidence Eva had died collecting. She had proof, Grayson said. My daughter spent 3 years gathering it, and it got her killed. So yeah, Wyatt, I have proof. Silence again. Heavy, dangerous. An older man stood up slowly. Silas Blackwell, 60 years old, gray beard down to his chest, tattoos covering both arms. Silas had been one of Grayson's closest friends for 30 years, had been there when Eva was born, had taught her how to throw a punch when she was 8 years old and came home crying because boys were bullying her. Silas looked at the photos with an expression Grayson couldn't quite read. Then he looked up and met Grayson's eyes. I loved that girl like she was my own daughter, Silas said quietly. We all did. If someone in this room had a hand in what happened to her, they deserve everything coming to them. Other men nodded, voiced agreement. The room began to unite behind the idea of justice for Eva. But Grayson watched Silas carefully, saw something in his old friend's eyes, something that might have been guilt, or might have been grief. It was hard to tell the difference sometimes. So what are you proposing? Wyatt asked. I'm proposing we clean house, root out the corruption, find out who's been working with the Serpent Syndicate and cut them out like the cancer they are. And then we take the fight to the serpents themselves. We finish what Eva started. That's war, someone said from the back. You're talking about going to war with one of the most dangerous criminal organizations on the West Coast. Yes, Grayson agreed. I am. The question is whether you're with me or not. The room divided instantly. Some men stood moving to Grayson's side. Others remained seated uncertain. A few looked openly hostile. Wyatt studied the divide with the careful assessment of a man trying to hold something together as it fell apart. You want your patch back, Wyatt said finally. You want to be president again. I want justice for my daughter. If that means taking back the patch, then yes. And if the club votes against you, then I do it alone. But I'm doing it either way. Silas stepped forward, placing himself beside Grayson. The gesture was clear, symbolic. One of the oldest, most respected members choosing sides. I'm with Grayson, Silas declared. Eva died trying to protect this club. Least we can do is honor her sacrifice. Others moved then, not all of them, not even most of them, but enough. Enough to show that Grayson still commanded loyalty, still had followers willing to ride into hell if he asked. Wyatt looked at the division and sighed heavily. Vote. All in favor of Grayson Ashford returning as president and leading the investigation into Eva's death, raise your hand. Hands went up. Grayson counted silently. 32 members present. 23 raised their hands, a clear majority. All opposed, 9 hands, including Wyatt's own. Motion passes. Wyatt unpinned the president's patch from his cut and held it out. It's yours, Grayson. Hope you know what you're doing. Grayson took the patch. The weight of it was familiar, heavy in ways that had nothing to do with the physical object. He pinned it to his chest, feeling the decades of history settle back onto his shoulders. He was president again. The Reaper had returned, and he had a war to fight, a promise to keep. The men who had voted against him filed out silently. The ones who stayed gathered closer, waiting for orders, for direction, for the plan that would define the next chapter of the Devil's Riders. Grayson looked at them, his brothers, his family, and wondered which one of them had betrayed his daughter. Tomorrow we start investigating, he said. Every business, every member, every transaction. We find the rot and we cut it out. No mercy, no exceptions. This club meant something once. Eva died trying to save it. We're going to make sure she didn't die for nothing. The men nodded, grim, determined, united by grief and the promise of justice. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and gold, the last light of day fading into darkness. Grayson Ashford stood in that twilight and remembered his daughter's smile, her determination, her courage, her absolute conviction that doing the right thing mattered even when the cost was everything. He would finish what she started. He would bring down the Serpent Syndicate. He would find the traitor who had betrayed her, and he would make sure that Eva's death meant something. Because Ashfords don't quit, and a father's love doesn't end with death. It endures, it transforms, it becomes something harder and sharper and more dangerous than anything the world has seen before. The Reaper was back, and hell was coming with him. 26 months before Eva's death, Evangeline Ashford walked into the Red Venom bar with a confidence she didn't feel. The place smelled like cigarettes and spilled beer and something darker underneath. Violence, maybe, or desperation. The kind of establishment where people came to forget who they were or remember who they used to be. The Red Venom sat on the edge of downtown Los Angeles in a neighborhood where gentrification and decay fought a constant battle. Expensive lofts looked down on liquor stores with barred windows. Young professionals in designer jeans walked past homeless veterans pushing shopping carts. The bar existed in that liminal space, catering to both worlds and belonging to neither. Eva had spent 6 months building her cover identity. Elena Crane, 23 years old, bartender with a checkered past. A girl who had learned early that men with money and power could be useful if you knew how to smile at the right moment and keep your mouth shut at the right time. The kind of girl the Serpent Syndicate hired. She had applied 3 times before they finally called her back. The first 2 attempts hadn't even gotten responses. But Margaret had contacts, and those contacts had whispered Elena Crane's name in the right ears. Mentioned that she was good with the numbers, that she kept her head down, that she had family connections to motorcycle clubs that might prove useful. That last part was what got her the interview. Now she stood at the bar, polishing glasses, while her eyes tracked every movement in the room. 2 men in expensive suits sat in the corner booth speaking in low tones. A woman with bleached hair and dead eyes served them drinks. 3 more men played pool in the back, their laughter too loud, their movements too aggressive. And at the center of it all, watching everything with the patient attention of a spider in its web, sat Lucian Graves. He was 40 years old but looked older. Not from age, but from the weight of choices that left marks on a person's soul. Dark hair slicked back. Tailored suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. Hands that were too soft to have ever done manual labor, but had clearly done other kinds of work. The kind that left different scars. Avova had studied his file until she could recite it in her sleep. Born in San Diego to a single mother who died when he was 12. Bounced through foster care until he aged out at 18. Built himself from nothing into something powerful and terrible. The Serpent Syndicate had been his creation, his vision, his empire built on the suffering of people who never saw him coming. He looked up as she approached with his drink. Bourbon. Neat. Always bourbon. The file had mentioned that too. "You're new," he said, not a question. An observation delivered with the casual certainty of a man who noticed everything. "Started last week," Eva replied, setting down the glass. "Elena, I know your name." He took a sip, evaluating. "You're Frank Crane's daughter." Ava's heart rate spiked, but she kept her expression neutral. Frank Crane was the imaginary father Margaret's team had created. A low-level criminal who had run with various motorcycle clubs in the 90s before dying in a bar fight. Dead men made good fathers for cover identities because they couldn't contradict the story. Was, Eva corrected, "He died when I was 16. Motorcycle accident, the file says. But that's not what really happened, is it? A test. He was testing her. Seeing if she would stick to the official story or provide something more interesting." Eva leaned against the bar, lowering her voice. "He got drunk and picked a fight with the wrong guy. Knife in the ribs, bled out before the ambulance came. But Mom told everyone it was an accident because she didn't want people to know he died like a fool." The truth of fiction, the best lies, were the ones that felt real because they contained the emotional honesty even when the facts were invented. Lucian smiled, not a warm smile. The smile of a man who appreciated competent deception. "Your mother raised you right. Keeping secrets is a valuable skill." "I've kept plenty of secrets." "I'm sure you have." He gestured to the empty seat across from him. "Sit. Let's talk about what other skills you might have." Eva glanced at the other bartender, who nodded permission. She slid into the booth across from Lucian Graves and began the most dangerous conversation of her life. He asked about her past, about her father's connections to motorcycle clubs, about whether she knew how to keep her mouth shut when she saw things she wasn't supposed to see, about whether she understood that working for the Serpent Syndicate meant loyalty above everything else. Eva answered carefully, letting him lead, giving him just enough truth wrapped in lies to seem authentic. She had practiced this 1,000 times with Margaret, the way to lean forward when he said something important, the way to hesitate before answering sensitive questions, the micro-expressions that conveyed respect and fear and ambition in equal measure. By the time their conversation ended, she had a new job. Not just bartending, running errands, making deliveries, keeping track of who came and went, the kind of work that seemed minor but provided access to everything. Lucian stood to leave, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced precision. "Don't disappoint me, Elena. I reward loyalty, but I have a very long memory for betrayal." "Understood," Eva said quietly. He left. The bar seemed to breathe easier in his absence. Eva returned to polishing glasses with hands that trembled slightly. She was in, 18 months before Eva's death. The next months blurred together in a haze of careful observation and controlled deception. Eva worked her way deeper into the Serpent Syndicate's operations. From bartending to bookkeeping to managing their legitimate businesses that served as fronts for everything else. She smiled and kept her head down and became invisible in the way that made her invaluable. She learned how they moved money through a network of shell corporations, how they used legitimate shipping companies to transport illegal cargo, how they had connections in law enforcement, politics, and business that made them nearly untouchable. And she learned about their relationship with the Devil's Riders. It started small. A request to use a Devil's Riders warehouse for storage, payment in cash that the club leadership couldn't refuse. Then another warehouse, another favor, more money. By the time anyone realized what was happening, the Serpent Syndicate had their hooks deep in the organization. Eva documented everything, photographed documents when she thought no one was watching, recorded conversations on the tiny device hidden in her watch, met with Margaret once a month in parking garages and parks where no one would recognize them, handed over evidence that would eventually bring down the entire operation. But she also started noticing patterns, discrepancies. Someone inside the Devil's Riders was providing information that they shouldn't have, details about club operations, names of members who might be vulnerable to recruitment, internal conflicts that could be exploited. Someone high up, someone trusted. Eva started her own investigation within the investigation, tracking information flow, trying to identify the source. It became an obsession. Every piece of intel she gathered, she analyzed for signs of the mole. Every meeting she observed, she looked for connections. 3 months before Eva's death. 3 months before her death, Eva was alone in Lucian's office downloading files from his computer while he was in a meeting. She had 10 minutes, maybe less. Her hands moved quickly across the keyboard, bypassing security protocols that Margaret's tech team had taught her to defeat. The files transferred to her hidden drive. Financial records, communication logs, shipping manifests, everything she needed to prove the Serpent Syndicate's operations beyond any doubt. But as she waited for the final file to copy, she noticed a folder marked Assets Internal. Curiosity made her click. The file opened. A list of names appeared. People who work for the Serpent Syndicate. Some she recognized, some she didn't. And there, 3/4 down the list, a code name that made her blood run cold. Viper. MC Liaison. She clicked on the file. Bank account information appeared. Regular payments. $50,000 a month. For 8 years. The account holder's name was hidden behind corporate shells. But Eva had spent 18 months learning how the Serpent Syndicate hid their money. She knew how to trace it. It took her 45 minutes of careful research, 45 minutes of following the money through 3 different banks and 2 offshore accounts, 45 minutes of her life that changed everything. The account belonged to Silas Blackwell. Eva stared at the screen in her tiny apartment, unable to process what she was seeing. Uncle Silas, the man who had taught her to fight, who had been at every birthday party, who had called her princess, and threatened boys who looked at her wrong and cried at her high school graduation. Silas had betrayed them all. For 8 years, he had been feeding information to the Serpent Syndicate, taking their money, helping them infiltrate the Devil's Riders, turning her father's legacy into a criminal enterprise. She wanted to be wrong. Spent 2 more weeks investigating, looking for any other explanation, any possibility that the evidence was misleading or incomplete. But the truth was unavoidable. Silas Blackwell was the traitor. Eva sat in her apartment and cried. Not for herself, for her father who trusted Silas completely, for the Devil's Riders who had been betrayed by one of their own, for the naive part of herself that still believed family meant something. She called Margaret that night, told her everything. Margaret's response was immediate and pragmatic. You need to extract, now. If Silas finds out, you know you're dead. I can't, Eva said. Not yet. I'm so close to getting everything we need. The complete network, the connections, the proof that will stand up in court. Eva listened to me very carefully. Silas Blackwell is a dangerous man. He's already betrayed everyone he loves once. He won't hesitate to do it again if his secret is threatened. 2 more weeks, that's all I need. You don't have 2 weeks. The moment Silas suspects anything, you're compromised. Extract now while you still can. But Eva didn't extract. She told herself she needed more evidence, that she owed it to her father to finish the job completely, that 2 more weeks wouldn't make a difference. She was wrong. 8 days before Grayson finds her, 1 week before Eva's death, Silas figured it out. She never knew exactly how. Maybe she got careless. Maybe someone at the FBI tipped him off. Maybe he just had good instincts honed by decades of survival. But one night as she left the Red Venom, Silas was waiting in the parking lot. He stood beside his motorcycle, his expression unreadable in the dim light. 60 years old, but still dangerous. Still capable of violence despite the gray in his beard. "Evening, Princess," he said quietly. The nickname that had always been affectionate now sounded like a threat. "Uncle Silas," Eva kept her voice steady, controlled. "What are you doing here? Could ask you the same thing. This isn't really your kind of place, is it? Or should I say it's not Elena Crane's kind of place?" Her heart stopped. He knew. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't." The word was sharp, final. "Don't insult both of us by lying. I've known you since you were born, Eva. Watched you grow up. Taught you half of what you know. You think I wouldn't recognize my own goddaughter no matter what name she's using?" Eva's hand moved toward her purse, toward the gun hidden inside. But Silas was faster. He had his weapon out before she could reach hers. Not pointing at her, not yet. Just visible. A reminder of the balance of power. "We need to talk," Silas said. "Somewhere private, your choice. We can do this easy or we can do this hard. But we're going to talk." Ava calculated her odds. She was younger, faster, but Silas had 50 years of experience. And he had the advantage of surprise. If she ran, he would shoot. If she fought, she would lose. "There's a warehouse," she said finally. "Industrial district, abandoned. No one goes there. Lead the way." They drove in silence. Eva in her car, Silas following on his motorcycle. Her mind raced through scenarios. Ways to escape. Ways to call for help. Ways to survive the next hour. But deep down, she knew. She had pushed too far. Stayed too long. Made the mistake of thinking she was smarter than everyone else. The warehouse was exactly what she had described. Abandoned. No cameras, no witnesses, just empty space and shadows and the distant sound of traffic on the highway. They stood facing each other in the center of the empty floor. The last light of day filtered through broken windows high above. In an hour, it would be fully dark. In an hour, this would all be over. "How long have you known?" Eva asked. "About you being FBI 2 weeks, about you investigating me specifically 3 days. Silas lowered his gun, but didn't holster it. "You're good, Eva, better than I expected. But you made mistakes, asked too many questions about old business. Looked at me too long when you thought I wasn't paying attention. Little things, but I've been doing this long enough to notice little things." 8 years, Eva said. "You've been working for the Serpent Syndicate for 8 years, taking their money, betraying betraying everyone. You think it was about money?" Silas's voice rose with genuine anger. "You think I sold out your father for a paycheck? Then why?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was raw with old pain. "They took my son 8 years ago. Marcus was 20 years old. Good kid, smart, going to college, had his whole life ahead of him. Then one day he disappeared. No note, no phone call, just gone." Ava felt something cold settle in her stomach. 3 weeks later, I got a video. Marcus tied to a chair, beaten, terrified, and Lucian Graves standing behind him with a knife. The message was simple. Work for them or Marcus dies. Provide information about the Devil's Riders or they send me pieces of my son. Oh God. "So yeah, I betrayed your father. I betrayed the club. I betrayed everything I believed in. Because what else was I supposed to do? Let my son die. What would you have done, Eva, if it was your father's life on the line?" Eva's throat tightened. She understood now. The impossible choice, the kind of decision that destroyed a person no matter what they chose. "Where is Marcus now?" "Dead." Silas's voice broke. "They killed him anyway, 6 months ago. Overdose, they said. But I know they were done with the leverage, decided it was cleaner to just eliminate him. And I'm still working for them because by then I was in too deep. They owned me completely." "Uncle Silas." "Don't." He raised the gun again, pointing it directly at her. Don't you dare pity me. I made my choices, lived with them, but I can't let you expose me, Ava. Can't let you destroy what's left of my life. Can't go to prison. Can't face your father knowing what I did. This doesn't have to end this way. Help me bring them down. Testify against the Serpent Syndicate. They killed your son. Make them pay for it. You think testimony matters? You think justice exists for men like me? I'm 60 years old. I've got nothing left except a slim hope that maybe I die before anyone finds out what I really am. Eva took a step forward. You're not a monster. You're a father who tried to save his son. There's redemption in that. There's a way back. No, Silas shook his head. There isn't. Not for me. I'm sorry, Princess. I really am. You're a good kid. Your daddy raised you right. But I can't let you live. You know too much, and unlike you, I stopped believing in redemption a long time ago. Please. The word hung in the air between them. A prayer, a plea, a final desperate attempt to reach the man who had been like a second father to her. Silas's hand trembled. Tears ran down his face into his gray beard. Tell your father I'm sorry. Tell him I never wanted any of this. Tell him Marcus sends his love. Uncle Silas, don't! The gunshot echoed through the empty warehouse. Ava felt the impact before she felt the pain. A punch to her chest that drove the air from her lungs. She stumbled backward. Her legs gave out. The concrete floor rushed up to meet her. She lay on her back, staring up at the broken skylights and the darkening sky beyond. Her chest felt warm and wet. She tried to breathe and tasted copper. Silas stood over her, the gun hanging loose in his hand, still crying. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry, Princess. Eva's vision began to narrow, but her hand moved to her jacket pocket, to the small recording device that had been transmitting everything for the past 20 minutes. Margaret would have heard it all, would know what happened, would make sure Silas faced justice even if Eva didn't live to see it. Her lips moved, forming words that Silas couldn't hear. Ashford's, don't quit. Then the darkness took her. 10 days after Eva's death, Grayson Ashford stood in the Devil's Riders clubhouse, surrounded by maps and documents and photographs that had consumed his life for the past 2 weeks. Since Eva's funeral, since he had taken back the president's patch, since he had sworn to finish what his daughter started, the investigation had been slow, methodical. Every business transaction examined, every member questioned, every connection to the Serpent Syndicate traced and documented. Margaret had provided additional files, evidence that Eva had gathered but never had the chance to analyze fully, and gradually a picture emerged. The Serpent Syndicate had infiltrated the Devil's Riders through 3 primary channels. First, they had corrupted businesses owned by club members, using them to launder money. Second, they had recruited low-level members with cash payments and promises of protection. Third, they had a high-value asset inside the club leadership, someone who provided strategic information, someone who had been working with them for years. Grayson had narrowed it down to 3 possibilities: Wyatt Brennan, Danny Reeves, or Silas Blackwell. He didn't want it to be Silas. The man was his oldest friend, had been best man at his wedding, had held Eva minutes after she was born, had been there for every important moment in Grayson's life. But the evidence kept pointing in that direction. It was Margaret who confirmed it. She arrived at the clubhouse late one night, her expression grim. We need to talk, she said, privately. They went to Grayson's office, the same office where he had run the Devil's Riders for 20 years, where he had made decisions that affected hundreds of lives, where he now sat and tried to understand how everything had fallen apart. Margaret placed a small device on the desk. Eva was wearing a wire when she died. It transmitted everything to our surveillance team in real time. Grayson's hands clenched into fists. I don't want to hear my daughter die. You need to, because it answers every question you have been asking. It tells you who betrayed her and why, and there's something else you need to know. She paused, choosing her words carefully. The wire had a 15-minute delay. Security protocol. By the time the transmission reached us and we understood what was happening, I dispatched a team immediately. They arrived 7 minutes after the gunshot. Too late to save her, just in time to secure the body and preserve the crime scene. 7 minutes. Grayson's voice was hollow. I'm sorry. If I had known if the system had been real time, maybe we could have saved her. That's something I'll carry for the rest of my life. But she left you this. She left you the truth. Margaret pressed play. For the next 20 minutes, Grayson listened to his daughter confront Silas Blackwell. Listened to Silas confess 8 years of betrayal. Listened to the impossible choice that had driven a good man to monstrous acts. Listened to Eva plead for his life, even as he pointed a gun at her. And listened to the gunshot that ended everything. When it finished, Grayson sat in silence. Margaret waited, patient, understanding that he needed time to process. Marcus, Grayson said finally, he told me Marcus moved to Seattle, got a job, was doing well. Marcus died of an overdose in San Diego 6 months ago. The police report listed as accidental, but there were signs of foul play. Probably the Serpent Syndicate teeing up loose ends. So Silas sacrificed everything for nothing. Yes. Grayson stood slowly. His body felt heavy, ancient, like he had aged 50 years in the past 2 weeks. Where is he now? We have him under surveillance. He hasn't left his house in 3 days. I don't think he's planning to run. I think he's waiting. For what? For you to find him. Grayson picked up his jacket. Then let's not disappoint him. They drove in silence. Margaret at the wheel of an unmarked FBI sedan. Grayson in the passenger seat, watching the city lights blur past. He had thought about this moment 1,000 times. What he would say, what he would do, how he would feel when he finally faced his daughter's killer. But now that it was here, he felt nothing. Just a vast emptiness where emotions should have been. Silas's house was small, a modest place in a quiet neighborhood where families raised children and people mowed their lawns on Saturday mornings. Not the kind of place where you expected to find a killer. But evil rarely looked like you expected it to. The lights were on inside. Through the front window, Grayson could see Silas sitting at the kitchen table. Just sitting, staring at nothing, waiting for judgment. I should go in with you, Margaret said. No, this is between me and him. He's dangerous, Grayson. He's already killed once. If he wanted to run, he would have run. If he wanted to fight, he would have prepared. He's waiting because he knows what's coming. Let me give it to him. Margaret hesitated, then nodded. I'll be right outside. Grayson walked to the front door. It was unlocked. He pushed it open and stepped inside. The house smelled like coffee and old memories. He had been here hundreds of times over the years. Birthday parties, poker nights, quiet evenings when they just needed someone to talk to. Silas looked up as Grayson entered the kitchen. He didn't look surprised, just tired, so incredibly tired. Knew you'd figure it out eventually, Silas said quietly. You always were smarter than you let on. Grayson pulled out a chair and sat down across from him. The same table where they had drunk countless beers and solved the world's problems. Where they had laughed and argued and forged a friendship that had lasted 3 decades. Why didn't you come to me, Grayson asked, when they took Marcus? Why didn't you tell me? What could you have done? You were president of a motorcycle club, not special forces. Going up against the Serpent Syndicate would have gotten everyone killed. At least my way, only Marcus died. And Eva, Silas flinched. Yeah, and Eva, your brilliant, brave, impossible daughter who couldn't let things go, just like her old man. She gave you a chance. I heard the recording. She offered you redemption. All you had to do was help her. There is no redemption for what I've done. Not in this life or the next. I betrayed you, Grayson, betrayed the club, betrayed everything we built together, and for what my son still died. Your daughter still died. All I did was make things worse. Grayson reached into his jacket, Silas tensed, probably expecting a gun. But Grayson pulled out a flask. His father's flask, the one he had carried for 40 years. He took a long drink and passed it across the table. Silas took it with trembling hands, drank, passed it back. I came here to kill you, Grayson said. Spent the whole drive thinking about how I would do it, quick or slow, painless or agonizing. Whether I would tell you first or just pull the trigger. I wouldn't blame you. But the thing is, Eva already made her choice. She didn't want revenge. She wanted justice. Wanted the system to work the way it's supposed to work. And I promised her I would finish what she started. Can't do that if I become a murderer. Silas looked at him with something like hope. What are you saying? I'm saying you're going to testify. Going to tell the FBI everything you know about the Serpent Syndicate, every operation, every connection, every dirty secret. You're going to help us destroy them completely, and then you're going to prison for the rest of your life. That's not mercy, Grayson. That's worse than dying. I know, that's why I'm offering it, because you deserve to live with what you've done. Deserve to spend every day for the rest of your life remembering that you killed my daughter, that you betrayed your brothers, that you sacrificed your soul for nothing. Silas's face crumpled. He put his head in his hands and sobbed. Deep, wrenching sounds that shook his whole body. The sound of a man breaking under the weight of his sins. Grayson stood. Margaret's outside. She'll take you in. Cooperate fully, and maybe they'll go easier on you. Fight, and I'll make sure they throw away the key. He walked to the door, then paused. Looked back at the man who had been his closest friend, who had been at his wedding and his daughter's birth and every important moment in between, who was now nothing but a broken shell of regrets and failures. I loved you like a brother, Grayson said quietly. I would have died for you. And you killed my daughter. I hope you live long enough to understand what you took from me. He left. Margaret met him on the front lawn. It's done, Grayson said. He's ready to talk. Get him into protective custody before the Serpent Syndicate realizes we have him. Are you okay? Grayson looked at her, saw the genuine concern in her expression. This woman who had gotten his daughter killed, but was trying to make it right, who was risking her career and possibly her life to bring down the organization that had taken Eva from him. No, he said honestly, but I will be, once this is finished. They were loading Silas into an FBI vehicle when Grayson's phone rang. Wyatt's name appeared on the screen. We've got a problem, Wyatt said without preamble. The Serpent Syndicate knows we're investigating them. They're mobilizing. Looks like they're planning to hit the clubhouse. When? Now we've got maybe 20 minutes. What do you want to do? Grayson looked at Margaret. She had heard enough to understand the situation. Her expression hardened. I can get back up there in 30 minutes, she said. We don't have 30 minutes, Grayson replied. Then into the phone. Wyatt, get everyone out. Evacuate now. This isn't a fight we can win. The hell it isn't. We're Devil's Riders. We don't run. Eva didn't die so we could make stupid, heroic stands. Get everyone out. Live to fight another day. Grayson, that's an order. Evacuate now. He hung up and ran for his motorcycle. Margaret shouted something behind him, but he was already moving, rifting through the streets toward the clubhouse, toward his brothers, toward the war that had been brewing since the moment he pulled his daughter from that shallow grave. The night exploded around him. Grayson arrived to find the clubhouse already under attack. Black SUVs surrounded the building. Men in tactical gear poured out, weapons raised. The sound of gunfire shattered the quiet neighborhood. Windows exploded. Motorcycles fell in the parking lot riddled with bullets. The Serpent Syndicate had come for blood. Grayson ditched his bike a block away and ran toward the chaos. He saw Wyatt organizing the defense, shouting orders to the Devil's Riders who had refused to evacuate. Saw men he had known for decades taking cover behind vehicles and returning fire with whatever weapons they had. They were outnumbered 3-1. This wasn't a fight. It was an execution. Fall back, Grayson roared. Get to the rear exit. But it was too late. The Serpent forces were moving in from all sides. Coordinated, professional. This wasn't a gang war. This was a military operation designed to wipe out the Devil's Riders completely. The first floor was chaos. Automatic gunfire tore through walls. One of the Devil's Riders went down screaming. Another grabbed him, dragged him behind cover. Flashbang, someone shouted. The explosion was blinding, deafening. Grayson moved while the enemies were disoriented, putting 3 rounds center mass into the nearest enforcer. By the time they fought their way to the second floor, his ears were ringing and his lungs burned from the smoke. Grayson fought his way toward Wyatt, the man who had inherited his patch, who had never wanted the responsibility but had accepted it anyway, who was now bleeding from a wound in his shoulder but still fighting. Should have evacuated, Grayson shouted over the gunfire. Couldn't let them burn down everything you built, Wyatt replied. Had to make a stand. Stupid? Yeah, Wyatt managed a grim smile, but at least it's our stupid. A grenade landed near them. Wyatt saw it first. His eyes went wide. Time slowed down. Grayson saw everything with perfect clarity. The grenade, Wyatt's expression, the impossible distance between them and safety, the mathematical certainty that they couldn't both survive. Wyatt made the choice. He threw himself on the grenade. His body absorbed the blast. The explosion was muffled but devastating. Wyatt's form went limp. No, Grayson crawled to him. Wyatt's eyes were open but unfocused. Blood pooled beneath him. Get them out, Wyatt gasped. Save the brothers. You're going to be fine. Just hang on. Liar, a weak laugh. You were always terrible at lying. His hand found Grayson's, gripped with failing strength. Tell Sarah. Tell her I... He didn't finish. His hand went slack, his eyes fixed on something Grayson couldn't see. Wyatt Brennan, reluctant president, loyal brother, good man, dead at 55 because he refused to run. Rage replaced grief. Grayson grabbed Wyatt's weapon and stood, fired at the advancing serpent forces with a fury born of too much loss. 30 years of violence and experience condensed into pure focused hatred. Margaret's backup arrived in a screaming wave of sirens and flashing lights. FBI tactical teams poured into the fight. The tide turned. The serpent forces began to retreat, realizing they were now the ones outnumbered. But the damage was done. The clubhouse was burning. 6 Devil's Riders lay dead or dying. Wyatt's blood stained the concrete where he had made his final stand. And Grayson Ashford stood in the ruins of his legacy, surrounded by death and destruction, and understood that this war was far from over. Margaret found him sitting on the curb, staring at the flames. She sat down beside him. Didn't say anything, just sat. Eva knew this would happen, Grayson said finally. She knew they would retaliate. That's why she left me instructions. A plan. Everything I need to finish this. What kind of plan? I don't know yet. Haven't looked at the last files she left me. Was too angry, too focused on finding her killer. But she was always smarter than me, always 3 steps ahead. If she left a plan, it's because she knew I would need it. And when will you look? Tonight, after I bury Wyatt, after I honor the men who died defending something they believed in. After I accept that I can't do this through rage and violence. Have to be smarter. Have to fight the way Eva would fight. Margaret put a hand on his shoulder. She would be proud of you. You know that, right? Grayson didn't answer, just watched the clubhouse burn and thought about his daughter, about the plan she had left him, about the final gift she had given him even in death, instructions on how to win a war she hadn't lived to fight. The Serpent Syndicate thought they had won, thought they had broken the Devil's Riders, thought killing Ava and burning the clubhouse would end the threat. They were wrong, because Evangeline Ashford had been brilliant, strategic, forward-thinking in ways they couldn't imagine. She had left her father a roadmap to their destruction, and Grayson was going to follow it to the bitter end. For Eva, for Wyatt, for every person the Serpent Syndicate had hurt. The Reaper wasn't finished. He was just getting started. The safe house was a converted warehouse in the industrial district, the kind of place that looked abandoned from the outside, but had been fortified on the inside. Steel-reinforced doors, security cameras, escape routes that led to 3 different streets. Margaret had arranged it after the clubhouse burned, a place where the surviving Devil's Riders could regroup and plan their next move. Grayson sat alone in what used to be an office, surrounded by everything Eva had left him. Her laptop, her files, her handwritten notes that covered every surface, the accumulated evidence of 3 years of undercover work, the blueprint for destroying the Serpent Syndicate. He had been avoiding this moment, avoided looking at her final instructions because once he did, he would have to follow them, would have to see his daughter's plan through to its conclusion, would have to accept that she had known she was going to die and had prepared for it anyway. But Wyatt's death had changed something. The attack on the clubhouse had proven that rage and violence weren't enough. The Serpent Syndicate was too organized, too well-connected, too powerful to defeat through brute force. Eva had understood that. She had been smarter, more strategic. She had left him a different path. Grayson opened her laptop. The screen came to life. A folder labeled, "For Dad, when you're ready," sat prominently on the desktop. He clicked it. Inside were 3 files. Operation Venom, Phase 1. Operation Venom, Phase 2, Operation Venom. Phase 3, and a video file labeled simply Tactical Briefing. He clicked the video, needed to hear her voice one more time, needed to understand what she wanted him to do. The screen showed Eva in tactical mode. No tears, all business. She sat at a table with maps spread out before her. Her hair was pulled back. Her expression was focused. This wasn't the emotional goodbye from the first video. This was a soldier giving orders. Dad, her voice was crisp, professional. By now you've found Silas. You know the truth. Time for phase 3. She pointed to marked locations on the map. 17 targets, simultaneous raids. Here's how we do it. For the next 15 minutes, Eva laid out her strategy with military precision. No sentimentality, no emotional appeals, just cold hard tactics. The location of every Serpent facility, the optimal time to strike, the coordination needed between law enforcement and the motorcycle clubs, the warrants Margaret would need to obtain, the evidence that would stand up in court. It was brilliant, comprehensive, the work of someone who understood both the criminal world and the legal system, someone who had spent 3 years learning every detail of the enemy's operations and had used that knowledge to craft their destruction. At the end, Eva looked directly into the camera. I know you want to kill Lucian Graves yourself. I understand that urge. But don't. Let the system work. Let him spend the rest of his life in a cage knowing he was beaten by a 25-year-old FBI agent and her motorcycle club president father. That's a better revenge than a bullet. Trust me. She paused, and for just a moment, the professional mask slipped. Her voice softened. I love you, Dad. Finish this, then live. Be happy. That's what I want. The video ended. Grayson sat in silence. His daughter had given him everything he needed. Not just evidence, not just intelligence, but a complete operational plan that would destroy the Serpent Syndicate in a single coordinated strike. He opened phase 1. The details were exhaustive. Eva had researched every motorcycle club on the West Coast that had been victimized by the Serpent Syndicate, clubs that had lost members, had their businesses infiltrated, had been used as pawns in a larger game. She had contact information, evidence of what had been done to them, suggested talking points for recruitment. There were 4 primary targets: the Iron Wolves in Nevada, the Desert Scorpions in Arizona, the Coastal Raiders in Oregon, the Mountain Kings in Montana. Together with the Devil's Riders, they represented over 200 members. 200 angry men with legitimate grievances and nothing left to lose. Eva had even drafted the speech Grayson should give. He read it and heard her voice in every word. It was perfect. Exactly the right balance of emotion and logic. Appeal to their sense of justice while providing concrete evidence. Offer them purpose while being honest about the risks. Phase 2 was more complex. It detailed how to use Silas as an inside source, how to feed him information that he could pass to the Serpent Syndicate, how to make them think they were winning while actually walking into a trap. Classic misdirection. The kind of tactical thinking that came from studying Sun Tzu and applying it to modern criminal enterprise. But it was phase 3 that took his breath away. Eva had mapped out simultaneous raids on 17 different Serpent Syndicate operations across 4 states. She had identified which facilities were most critical, which ones contained evidence that would stand up in court, which arrests would destabilize the entire organization. She had even estimated how many federal agents would be needed and what warrants Margaret would have to obtain. At the bottom of phase 3 was a note in Eva's handwriting. Dad, I know you want to kill Lucian Graves yourself. I understand that urge. But don't. Let the system work. Let him spend the rest of his life in a cage knowing he was beaten by a 25-year-old FBI agent and her motorcycle club president father. That's a better revenge than a bullet. Trust me. Love, Eva. Grayson closed the laptop, wiped his eyes, stood slowly. His daughter was right. She was always right. Time to follow her plan. 2 weeks later, the meeting took place in a neutral location, an abandoned quarry 50 miles outside Las Vegas, far enough from civilization that no one would overhear, remote enough that betrayal would be obvious before it happened, the kind of place where men who didn't trust each other could talk. Grayson arrived first. He stood beside his motorcycle watching the horizon. Margaret was with him, the FBI presence that would prove this wasn't just some vigilante mission, that there was legal backing, that what they were planning had official sanction. The other clubs arrived in waves. First, the Iron Wolves. 20 men on gleaming motorcycles, their cuts bearing the silver wolf head that marked them as one of the oldest clubs in Nevada. Their president, a man called Frost, was 58. Gray hair, gray beard, eyes that had seen too much. Then the Desert Scorpions, 15 men from Arizona. Younger than the Wolves, more aggressive. Their president, a man named Reyes, was 45 and looked like he could still handle himself in a fight. The Coastal Raiders came next. 30 men from Oregon, salt of the earth types, blue-collar workers who rode on weekends and lived quiet lives until someone pushed them too far. Their president, Dalton, was 62 and moved like his back hurt, but his spirit was unbreakable. Finally, the Mountain Kings, 25 men from Montana, hard men from hard country. Their president, a man they called Bear, was 55 and built like his name suggested. Massive shoulders, hands like sledgehammers, voice that carried like thunder. 90 men total, plus the 20 Devil's Riders who had survived the attack on the clubhouse. 110 against an empire. Grayson stepped forward. The afternoon sun beat down on the quarry. Heat shimmered off the rocks. Everyone was armed, but no one had weapons drawn. This was a parley, a negotiation, a chance to decide whether they would fight together or die separately. "Thank you for coming," Grayson began, his voice carried across the quarry. "I know most of you don't know me personally, know me by reputation maybe. The Reaper, president of the Devil's Riders for 20 years, retired 3 years ago thinking I was done with all this." He gestured to the assembled men, the leather cuts, the motorcycles, the lifestyle that defined them. But the Serpent Syndicate didn't let me stay retired. They infiltrated my club, used us for their operations. And when my daughter discovered what they were doing, they killed her, murdered her, and buried her in the woods like she was nothing. The words still hurt to say, still felt like knives in his chest, but he forced them out. "Every club here has been victimized by the Serpent Syndicate. They've used you, stolen from you, killed your brothers, made you complicit in crimes you never agreed to. They think motorcycle clubs are easy targets, that we're too stupid or too divided to fight back, that we'll just accept their abuse and keep our heads down." Frost spoke up. "So you want to go to war? That why we're here?" "Not war," Grayson corrected. "Justice. There's a difference. My daughter was FBI. She spent 3 years gathering evidence against the Serpent Syndicate. Evidence that proves what they have done to all of us. Evidence that will put them away for life." He nodded to Margaret, who stepped forward with a briefcase. She opened it, revealing file folders with each club's name on them. "Special Agent Margaret Hawthorne," she introduced herself. "I was Eva Ashford's handler. These files contain documentation of every crime the Serpent Syndicate has committed against your organizations. We have enough evidence to charge over 200 people with federal crimes. But we need your help to execute the operation." Reyes crossed his arms skeptically. "Why should we trust the FBI? Half the cops in our cities are on the Serpent payroll." "Because I'm not asking you to trust the FBI," Margaret replied. "I'm asking you to trust the evidence. Look at the files. See for yourself what we have. Then decide." She handed the folders to each president. They read in silence. Minutes passed. The only sound was wind whistling through the quarry and the rustle of pages turning. Grayson watched their expressions change. Shock, anger, recognition. The evidence was irrefutable. Everything they had suspected but couldn't prove. Every betrayal, every manipulation, every crime. "This is solid," Frost said finally. "This could actually work." "What's the plan?" Bear asked. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. Grayson laid out Eva's strategy. Phase 1 was already complete. They were gathered. Phase 2 would involve coordinated surveillance and intelligence gathering. Phase 3 would be simultaneous raids on Serpent operations across 4 states. Federal law enforcement would make the arrests. The motorcycle clubs would provide support and muscle. When Dalton asked, 2 weeks, Grayson said. "We need time to coordinate, to make sure everyone knows their role, to gather the final pieces of evidence. Then we move, all at once, cut off every head of the Hydra before they can regroup." "And if something goes wrong," Reyes asked, "if the Serpent Syndicate figures out what we're doing?" Then we improvise. But my daughter planned for contingencies. She was smarter than all of us combined. If we follow her strategy, we win. Simple as that. The presidents looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between men who had led their own organizations for decades, men who understood risk and reward, who knew what it meant to commit to a course of action that could get everyone killed. Frost spoke first. The Iron Wolves are in. We've lost too many brothers to these bastards. Time to balance the scales. Desert Scorpions as well, Reyes said. Let's burn them down. Coastal Raiders, Dalton added, for our fallen. Bear was last. He looked at Grayson with an expression of deep respect. Your daughter was a brave woman. Hell of a lot braver than most men I know. The Mountain Kings will honor her memory. We're in. Grayson felt something loosen in his chest, relief, gratitude, pride. Eva's plan was working. She had predicted this moment, had known that if he presented the evidence properly, if he appealed to their sense of justice, they would unite. Thank you, he said simply. All of you. We do this for our fallen, and we do it right. No unnecessary violence. No revenge kills. We build the case, we make the arrests, we let the system work. That's what Eva wanted. That's what we're going to give her. Margaret stepped forward again. I'll need representatives from each club to coordinate with my team. We'll set up secure communications, assign targets, make sure everyone knows exactly what to do when the operation begins. The presidents nodded. They spent the next 2 hours going through logistics. Who would hit which facility? What evidence to secure? How to avoid civilian casualties? The minutiae of planning a military-scale operation with civilians and law enforcement working together. By the time the sun began to set, they had a plan. 110 motorcycle club members and 50 federal agents against an organization that had terrorized the West Coast for 15 years. The odds weren't great, but they were better than they had been. And for the first time since finding Eva in that shallow grave, Grayson Ashford felt something like hope. Phase 2, the inside man. Silas Blackwell sat in a federal holding cell waiting. They had moved him from standard lockup to protective custody after he agreed to testify. A small room with a comb and a toilet and nothing else. The kind of space designed to strip away everything except your thoughts. He had too many thoughts. Marcus, his son, dead for 6 months, killed by the same people Silas had betrayed everything to protect. All that sacrifice, all those years of lies, for nothing. Eva, his goddaughter, the little girl he had taught to fight, dead by his own hand. The look in her eyes as she bled out on that warehouse floor would haunt him until his own death. Grayson, his best friend of 30 years, the brother he had chosen, who would never forgive him, who shouldn't forgive him, who was right to hate him with every fiber of his being. The door opened. Silas looked up, expecting a guard. Instead, Grayson walked in, followed by Margaret Hawthorne. The door closed behind them. Silas stood slowly. They faced each other across 5 feet of concrete, an impossible distance, a gap that could never be bridged. Sit down, Grayson said quietly. Silas sat. Grayson remained standing, dominant position, making it clear who held the power here. Agent Hawthorne tells me you've agreed to cooperate fully, Grayson continued. Give us everything you know about the Serpent Syndicate. Testify in court. Help bring down the organization you worked for. Yes, Silas said. It's the least I can do. Not enough, never enough, but it's what I can offer. It's not enough, Grayson agreed. Nothing you do will ever be enough. But Ava thought you could be useful, left instructions that I should use you as an asset. So that's what I'm going to do. He pulled out a chair and sat down. Eye level now, 2 old men who had once been brothers, now separated by betrayal and blood. I need you to go back, Grayson said. Silas blinked. What? Back to the Serpent Syndicate. Back undercover. Margaret will arrange your release. Make it look like you escaped. You'll contact Lucian Graves. Tell him you had to run after the clubhouse attack. That the FBI was closing in. But you're still loyal, still valuable, still his inside man. They'll kill me, Silas said flatly. The moment they suspect I flipped, I'm dead. Probably, Grayson agreed, but this is your chance to make things right, to do something that actually matters. Eva's plan requires an inside source, someone who can confirm intelligence. Who can tell us when Lucian is vulnerable? You're the only option. Silas looked at Margaret. You're okay with this using me as bait. I don't like it, Margaret admitted, but I respect it. You want redemption? This is how you earn it. You go back. You feed us information. You help us take down the Serpent Syndicate. And maybe if you survive, you get to die knowing you did one good thing. And if I don't survive, then at least your death means something, Grayson said. More than Marcus got, more than Eva got. You want to honor them. This is how. Silas was quiet for a long time, thinking, calculating, understanding that this was a suicide mission dressed up as redemption, that Grayson was offering him a chance to die with purpose instead of rotting in a cell for the rest of his life. What do you need me to do? Silas asked finally. For the next hour they briefed him. What information to feed Lucian, how to confirm details about Serpent operations, what signs to look for that the endgame was approaching. Silas absorbed it all. Years of criminal experience made him a quick study. One more thing, Grayson said as they prepared to leave. If you betray us again, I won't kill you quick. I'll make sure you suffer. Make sure you have time to think about Marcus and Eva and everything you've lost. Understand? I understand, Silas said. But I'm not going to betray you, Grayson. Not this time. I've got nothing left to lose and nothing to gain. Might as well die doing something right for once. Grayson studied his old friend, trying to see past the decades of history, trying to evaluate him objectively. All he saw was a broken man looking for absolution that would never come. Eva believed people could change, Grayson said quietly. Believed redemption was possible even for the worst of us. I never shared her optimism. But I'm going to honor her belief. Give you this chance. Don't waste it. I won't. They left. The door closed. Silas sat alone again. But this time the weight felt different, not crushing, purposeful. He had a mission, a final task, a chance to die for something instead of nothing. It would have to be enough. 3 days later, Silas walked into the Red Venom bar, nervous, sweating, playing the part of a man on the run. The bartender recognized him immediately, made a phone call. Within 10 minutes, 3 Serpent Syndicate enforcers arrived to escort him to Lucian. The office was on the top floor of a legitimate shipping company. Expensive furniture, panoramic windows overlooking Los Angeles. The kind of place where evil wore a suit and tie and pretended to be respectable. Lucian sat behind his desk, studying Silas with cold calculation. You disappeared. Had to, Silas replied. After the clubhouse raid, I was everywhere asking questions, looking at financial records. I couldn't risk being connected. And yet here you are, taking an even bigger risk. Because I'm still useful, still have connections. Grayson Ashford trusts me, or trusted me, can rebuild that trust, feed you information about whatever he's planning next. Lucian leaned back in his chair. You killed his daughter. Why would he ever trust you again without you? He doesn't know it was me and thinks it was one of your people. I played the grieving godfather perfectly. Stood beside him at the funeral. Supported him when he took back the president's patch. I'm positioned exactly where you need me. It was a gamble. Silas had no idea how much Lucian knew about Eva's death. If he knew Silas had pulled the trigger. If he knew about the recording. But Grayson had assured him that information hadn't been leaked, that Lucian still thought Silas was his loyal asset. Lucian studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Haven't decided which yet. Can it be both? A hint of a smile. What's Ashford planning? Revenge, as someone said. He's gathering allies, other motorcycle clubs, building a coalition. Thinks he can take you down through numbers and righteous anger. How many clubs? 4, maybe 5. Could be as many as 100 men total. Lucian laughed. 100 bikers against my entire organization? That's not war. That's suicide. That's what I told him, but he won't listen. Grief has made him irrational. He wants blood, wants to hurt the people who hurt his daughter. Can't see that he's outmatched. When is this suicide mission happening? 2 weeks, maybe 3. He's still coordinating, still trying to convince everyone to join. You have time to prepare. Lucian stood and walked to the window. Los Angeles spread out below him, a city he had claimed as his own through violence and corruption. If Ashford wants war, we'll give him war, but not on his terms, on mine. We'll let him gather his allies, let him think he has a chance. Then we'll crush him so thoroughly that no one ever threatens the Serpent Syndicate again. Silas felt his stomach turn. He was feeding Lucian exactly what Eva's plan required, making him overconfident, making him commit resources to defending against an attack that would never come, setting him up for the real operation. "What do you need from me?" Silas asked. "Keep your position with Ashford. Feed me information. When he's ready to move, I want to know before it happens." "Can you do that?" "Yes." "Good." Lucian turned back to him. "You've been loyal for 8 years, Silas. Don't make me regret that loyalty now." "You won't." Silas left the office, walked back to his motorcycle, rode 3 blocks before pulling over to vomit in an alley. The stress, the fear, the absolute certainty that he was walking a razor's edge between redemption and death. He pulled out the burner phone Grayson had given him, sent a single text to a number that would route through 6 different servers before reaching Margaret. He bought it, preparing for fake attack, real Operation Greenlight. The response came 30 seconds later. "Good work. Stay safe." Silas laughed bitterly. Stay safe. As if that was possible. As if any of this would end with him alive. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that Eva's plan was working. The final countdown. The next 10 days were a blur of preparation. The motorcycle clubs coordinated with military precision. Margaret's FBI team obtained warrants for 17 different locations. Surveillance teams confirmed targets. Equipment was staged. Everyone rehearsed their roles until they could execute them in their sleep. Grayson barely slept. He spent every waking hour reviewing Eva's plan, looking for flaws, anticipating problems. His daughter had been brilliant, but no plan survived first contact with reality. He needed to be ready to improvise. On the 13th day, Silas sent word. Lucian was mobilizing his forces, preparing to defend against the motorcycle club attack he thought was coming. He had pulled resources from other operations, concentrated his people and weapons in locations he thought would be targeted. He had fallen for the misdirection completely. Tomorrow night, Grayson told the assembled presidents. They were gathered in the safe house. 110 men, 50 federal agents, and 1 old motorcycle club president who carried the weight of his daughter's legacy on his shoulders. Phase 3 begins at 0200 hours. Simultaneous raids on all 17 locations. FBI takes the lead. We provide support and secure evidence. No unnecessary violence, no revenge kills. We do this by the book, the way Eva wanted. He looked at each face, saw determination, saw readiness, saw men who had been victims deciding to become something else. This is for everyone the Serpent Syndicate has hurt. Everyone they've killed. Everyone they've corrupted. We're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for every person they would have victimized if we didn't stop them. That's what makes this righteous. That's what makes this worth doing. Frost raised his hand. What about you, Reaper? Where will you be? I'm going after Lucian Graves personally, Grayson said. He's at his primary facility. Surrounded by guards and security, Margaret's team will handle the assault, but I'll be there. Need to look him in the eye when he falls. That's suicide, Reyes said. Let the FBI handle it. It's justice, Grayson corrected. My daughter died gathering evidence on that man. I'm going to be there when he's arrested. Non-negotiable. Margaret stepped forward. He's right. Lucian needs to see that he was beaten by the people he underestimated. By motorcycle clubs he thought were too stupid to fight back. By a dead FBI agent's father who loved his daughter more than he feared death. That's the statement we're making. The room fell silent. Then one by one the presidents nodded, understanding, accepting. For the fallen, Bear said quietly. For the fallen, they echoed. Operation Venom. Execution. The night of the operation, Los Angeles held its breath. The city sprawled beneath a blanket of stars, unaware that war was coming. That in warehouses and offices and shipping facilities across 4 states, federal agents and motorcycle club members were converging. Grayson rode toward Lucian's facility with 20 Devil's Riders and 30 FBI tactical operators. The building was a converted factory, 3 stories, armed guards, security cameras. The kind of fortress that said legitimate business while being anything but. They parked 2 blocks away, approached on foot. Margaret coordinated on encrypted radio with 16 other teams. Everyone was in position. Everyone was ready. On my mark, Margaret said quietly. 3, 2, 1, execute. The world exploded into controlled chaos. Federal agents breached doors simultaneously at 17 locations. Flashbangs, shouts of FBI, suspects thrown to the ground. Evidence secured. Arrests made with the mechanical efficiency of a well-coordinated operation. At Lucian's facility, the FBI tactical team moved through the building with precision. The first floor fell quickly. The second floor was harder. Serpent enforcers were waiting armed with automatic weapons. The firefight was brutal. Grayson dove behind a concrete pillar as bullets tore through the air. One of the FBI agents went down screaming. Another grabbed him, dragged him to cover. Flashbang, someone shouted. The explosion was blinding, deafening. Grayson moved while the enemies were disoriented, putting 3 rounds center mass into the nearest enforcer. By the time they reached the 3rd floor, the resistance had crumbled. Silas was there, having opened the security doors from the inside. The old man moved with surprising speed for 60 years old. Lucian's office is at the end, Silas said. Heavy door, reinforced. But I have the code. They moved down the corridor, too quiet now. The fighting was over. Only the endgame remained. The office door opened. Lucian Graves stood behind his desk, but he wasn't surprised. He was smiling. Silas, Lucian said warmly, I was wondering when you'd bring him to me. Grayson's blood turned to ice. What? You didn't think I'd fall for that pathetic escape, did you? Lucian pulled out a gun. The FBI might be stupid, but I'm not. The moment Silas walked back into my bar, I knew. Knew he'd flipped. Knew he was leading you into a trap. Lucian, Silas stepped forward. Shut up, traitor. You killed my best asset when you shot that FBI bitch. Then you had the nerve to betray me. Lucian's gun swung toward Grayson. But you've brought me something valuable. The Reaper himself. Time slowed. Grayson saw Lucian's finger tighten on the trigger, saw the barrel aimed at his chest, saw his own death in the cold certainty of that moment. Silas moved, 60 years old, body ravaged by decades of violence and guilt. But in that moment, Silas Blackwell moved like he was 20 again. He threw himself between Grayson and the gun. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. Silas's body jerked. Blood bloomed across his chest. He stumbled backward into Grayson's arms. No! Grayson caught him, lowering him to the ground. Chillis, hold on. Finish it! Chillis gasped. Blood bubbled at his lips. My son? Tell him. His hand gripped Grayson's with surprising strength. The same hand that had taught Grayson to throw a punch 40 years ago. The same hand that had held Eva as a baby. The same hand that had pulled the trigger and ended her life. Tell Marcus. Silas's eyes were fading. Tell him his father tried. At the end. I will, Grayson promised. I'll tell him. Silas smiled, peaceful, like a weight had finally lifted. Eva was right. Redemption. The hand went slack. Silas Blackwell died in the arms of the man he had betrayed, redeemed by a sacrifice that could never balance the scales but was offered anyway. Grayson looked up at Lucian, who was trying to reload, but FBI agents were already flooding into the room. Margaret burst through the door, weapon raised. Lucian dropped the gun, raised his hands. The fight was over. Margaret approached Lucian with handcuffs. Lucian Graves, you're under arrest for racketeering money, laundering human trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder, and about 40 other charges. You have the right to remain silent. As she read his Miranda rights, Lucian stared at Grayson. Your daughter. This was her doing, wasn't it? The little FBI bitch who got herself killed. Grayson's fist clenched. Every instinct screamed across the room and break Lucian's face. To make him hurt. To make him pay in blood for what he had taken. But Eva's voice echoed in his memory. Don't give him the satisfaction. Let the system work. Her name was Evangeline, Grayson said quietly, still kneeling beside Silas's body. She was 25 years old. She was brilliant and brave, and everything you'll never be. She spent 3 years gathering evidence against you. Evidence that's going to put you away for the rest of your life. And you know the best part, He pulled out a small device, held it up so Lucian could see. For the past 6 months, she had a listening device planted in your office. Every conversation, every meeting, every crime you planned, all recorded, all admissible in court. You've been confessing to a dead woman this whole time. Lucian's face went white. That's not possible. We sweep this office daily. She was smarter than your security team, Margaret said. Smarter than you, smarter than everyone. And now you get to spend the rest of your life in a federal prison knowing you were beaten by a 25-year-old FBI agent and her motorcycle club president father. The agents moved in, cuffed Lucian, led him away. He didn't struggle, didn't shout, just walked quietly, a broken man realizing too late that he had underestimated his enemy. Grayson sat on the floor holding his dead friend and wept. For Eva, for Marcus, for the broken man who had tried at the very end to do one good thing. Margaret knelt beside him. We need to go. This place will be crawling with investigators soon. Give me a minute, Grayson said. Just one more minute. He looked down at Silas's peaceful face, the old warrior finally at rest. You did it, Grayson whispered. You redeemed yourself. I'll make sure Marcus knows. I'll make sure everyone knows. Then he stood, helped Margaret secure the scene, watched as forensics teams moved in. As Silas's body was taken away with honor, his phone buzzed, reports coming in from the other teams. 17 facilities raided, over 200 arrests, evidence secured that would guarantee convictions. The entire organization decapitated in a single night. Phase 3 complete. Margaret touched his arm gently. She did it, Grayson. Eva took them down. We did it, Grayson corrected. Together, the way she planned. There was one more piece of unfinished business. Margaret pulled Grayson aside as they left the building. We found the FBI mole, she said quietly. Agent Mark Phillips. He was feeding information to the Serpent Syndicate for 3 years. He's the one who compromised Eva's cover. Grayson's jaw tightened. Where is he? Federal custody. He'll face trial along with everyone else. Margaret paused. Eva suspected him. She documented his involvement in her files. Even in death, she got him. Good. Grayson looked at the burning building. Eva always finished what she started. Yes, Margaret agreed quietly. She did. Outside, the sun was beginning to rise. A new day dawning over a city that was a little bit cleaner, a little bit safer. Because one brave woman had decided to fight and a father had decided to finish what she started. Epilogue 3 months later. Grayson stood in FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. The building was imposing, federal, the kind of place where history was made and justice was supposedly served. He wore a suit instead of his leather cut, felt uncomfortable and constrained. But this wasn't a motorcycle club event. This was official. The ceremony was in a large conference room. Press was there. Cameras. Important people in important suits. All gathered to recognize the operation that had brought down the Serpent Syndicate. Margaret stood at the podium giving a speech about interagency cooperation and the importance of dedicated law enforcement. She mentioned Eva's name a dozen times, talked about her courage, her sacrifice, her brilliant strategic mind that had made the operation possible. Then she called Grayson to the stage. He walked up feeling every eye in the room on him. The old biker, the reformed criminal, the father who had lost everything and decided to fight back. Margaret held a small wooden box, opened it to reveal a gold medal, the FBI Medal of Valor, the highest honor the Bureau could bestow. This medal is awarded posthumously to Special Agent Evangeline Ashford. Margaret said, her voice thick with emotion. For extraordinary courage in the face of extreme danger. For dedication to justice that cost her everything. For an investigation that will be studied and admired for generations. Eva Ashford was the best of us. This medal doesn't do her justice, but it's what we can offer. She pinned the medal to a blue ribbon and handed it to Grayson. He held it carefully, felt the weight. Not just the physical weight of medal and ribbon, but the weight of everything it represented. His daughter's life, her sacrifice, her unwavering belief that justice mattered. Thank you, he said quietly. Then looking directly at the cameras, my daughter believed people could be better, could choose to do the right thing even when it was hard, even when it cost them. She lived that belief every day, and she died for it. This medal belongs to her, but the legacy belongs to all of us. Every person who decides to stand up, to fight back, to be better than the world expects. That's what Eva would want. That's how we honor her. The room erupted in applause. Grayson stood there holding his daughter's medal and let himself feel pride. Not for himself, for her. For everything she had accomplished. For the mark she had left on the world in just 25 years, 1 year later. After the ceremony, Grayson drove to two cemeteries. The first was small, in San Diego, where Silas Blackwell lay buried next to his son Marcus. Grayson placed Eva's FBI Academy graduation photo on Silas's grave, and a letter he had written to Marcus explaining how his father had died trying to redeem himself, how Silas's last words had been of his son, how at the very end, Silas Blackwell had been the man Marcus had always believed he was. Some debts can never be repaid, Grayson said to the graves, but they can be acknowledged. You both deserved better. I hope you found each other. I hope you're at peace. Then he drove to the second cemetery, the one where Eva rested. Her grave was well tended now. Fresh flowers appeared regularly. People who had been saved by the operation. FBI agents who respected her work. Motorcycle club members who understood her sacrifice. Grayson placed the Medal of Valor on her headstone, sat down beside the grave, opened his jacket and pulled out a letter. The last letter, the one she had written for him to read after it was all over. Dear Dad, if you're reading this, then you did it. You finished what I started. You brought down the Serpent Syndicate. You proved that justice can win even against impossible odds. I'm so proud of you. I know these past months have been hell. I know losing me hurt in ways I can't even imagine. I know you've carried guilt and rage and grief that probably felt unbearable, but you channeled it into something meaningful, something that made the world better. That's what heroes do. That's what you've always been even when you didn't believe it. Now I need you to do something harder than fighting criminals. I need you to live, really live, not just exist, not just go through the motions, but find joy and purpose and peace. The Devil's Riders don't have to be about violence anymore. You've proven that. Transform them into something positive, something that helps instead of hurts. Build the legacy you always wanted, the one Mom would have been proud of. And please, Dad, forgive yourself for the choices you made when you ran the club, for not protecting me, for whatever guilt you're carrying. I don't blame you. I never blamed you. Everything I did, I chose freely because you taught me that choices matter, that standing up for what's right is worth any cost. I love you so much. You were the best father I could have asked for. You taught me everything that matters, how to be strong, how to be smart, how to love with your whole heart. I carry you with me always, even now, even in death. So live, Dad, live enough for both of us. Be happy, find peace. That's what I want. That's what I need you to do. Ashfords don't quit. But sometimes we need to let go of the pain, let go of the guilt, let go of the past and embrace the future. I'll always be your daughter. You'll always be my hero. And someday when your time comes, I'll be waiting. We'll ride together again, just like old times. Until then, live well, love fully, make the world better. I'm so proud of you, Dad. Love always and forever, Eva. Grayson folded the letter carefully, placed it in his jacket pocket right over his heart, looked at his daughter's headstone, and smiled through his tears. I will, baby girl, he whispered. I promise. I'll live well, for both of us. Present day. 1 year after Eva's death, the Devil's Riders Motorcycle Club had transformed completely. The clubhouse had been rebuilt, but not as a fortress, as a community center. The Evangeline Ashford Foundation occupied the ground floor. Offices for counselors who worked with trafficking victims, a legal aid clinic for people who couldn't afford lawyers, a youth outreach program that taught trades and provided mentorship. The motorcycle club still existed, still rode, still wore their cuts with pride, but they were different now. They escorted abuse victims to court, provided security for shelters, helped rebuild communities that had been destroyed by crime. The Devil's Riders had become exactly what Eva believed they could be, protectors instead of predators. Grayson, at 59, served as president and director of the foundation. He split his time between administrative work, and riding with his brothers. Found purpose in both. Found peace in knowing that Eva's death had created something meaningful. He visited Wyatt Brennan's daughter Sarah regularly. She worked at the foundation now, 3 days a week, helping trafficking victims rebuild their lives. Each time he saw her, Grayson told her what her father had been trying to say in his final moments. He wanted you to know he loved you, that he was proud of you, that everything he did to protect people like you. Wyatt would have been proud. On the anniversary of Eva's death, Grayson rode out to her grave, alone this time, just a father visiting his daughter. He brought white lilies, her favorite, placed them carefully beside the headstone that now included her FBI Medal of Valor mounted on a plaque. "Hey, baby girl," he said, settling down beside the grave. "Been a busy year. The foundation is doing good work. We helped 23 trafficking victims get their lives back. Got 12 kids into college who never thought they'd have the chance. Convinced 4 other motorcycle clubs to start their own community programs." He pulled out a photo, the grand opening of the foundation. Dozens of people smiling. Former victims, FBI agents, motorcycle club members, all working together. "You'd love this, Eva. Everyone working together. Bikers and cops, criminals and victims, all focused on making things better. It's messy and complicated and doesn't always work perfectly, but it's real. It matters, just like you always said it would." The wind rustled through the trees. Grayson imagined it was Eva's voice, telling him she was proud, telling him to keep going, telling him that love doesn't end with death. "I miss you every day," he admitted. "Every single day I wake up and for a second I forget you're gone. Then I remember and it hurts all over again. But I'm learning to live with it, learning to carry the grief without letting it crush me, learning to be happy again like you wanted." He stood slowly, his knees protested. 60 was approaching fast, but he didn't feel old, felt purposeful, felt like there was still work to do. "I love you, Princess. Always have, always will. You changed the world in 25 years. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure people remember that, making sure your legacy lives on." He touched the headstone one last time, then turned and walked back to his motorcycle. The engine roared to life. He rode away from the cemetery toward the foundation, toward the work that awaited him. Evangeline Ashford had died fighting for justice. Grayson Ashford would live honoring her sacrifice. The Devil's Riders would protect instead of destroy. And somewhere in whatever place existed beyond death, a daughter smiled knowing her father had kept his promise. Ashfords don't quit. They finish what they start. They love with everything they have. And they make the world better one choice at a time. That was Eva's legacy. That was Grayson's promise. And that was the story of how a father's love became redemption. How a daughter's sacrifice became change. How evil was defeated not by violence, but by justice. And how in the end the good guys won. Not because they were stronger, not because they were tougher, but because they believed it mattered. And belief in the end was the most powerful weapon of all.